Yo, Shortbox Nation, hello again. Welcome back. Hey, and thanks for pressing play today. If you're brand new, welcome to the show. My name is Bodder, and this is the Shortbox Podcast, the comic book talk show that brings you the best conversations about your favorite comics with the creators that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making them. This is episode 471, and today I'm talking with six-time New York Times best-selling comics writer, novelist, and playwright, Fred Van Lente. Van Lente burst into the scene with his first collaboration with cartoonist Ryan Dunlavey on Action Philosophers, which has raked up a few rewards with the American Library Association. From there, he went on to a long career at Marvel, where he worked on titles like The Amazing Spider-Man, Captain America, and Marvel Zombies. He's also written for DC, Archie Comics, Dark Horse, Boom Studios, Dynamite Comics, and Valiant, where his run on Archer Armstrong was nominated for a Harvey Award for Best Continuing Series. Van Lente is also a Did I say he's also a playwright? I think I said that in the intro. Alongside his very talented and successful wife, Crystal Stillman, he's the co-author of King Kirby, a play based on the life of the legendary comics artist Jack Kirby. Little fun fact behind the scenes: we are recording this episode on Thursday, August 28th, which would have been Jack Kirby's birthday. He would have been 108 years old. So rest in peace to the king himself. Van Lente is on the podcast today to talk about his life and career as a writer, as well as his new projects coming out later this year, including a new noir-style zombie series for Dynamite Entertainment called Dynamite, with an exclamation point in there somewhere, Dynamite Blood Red, which comes out October 8th and features Vampirella, I think Red Sonja's in there, and as well as a whole all-star cast of characters from Dynamite's superhero roster. You can check out a preview of the comic and pre-order the first issue of Dynamite Blood Red by clicking one of the many helpful links I have in the show notes. So check that out. But before we officially get started, I want to dedicate this episode to all of the Shortbox patronies, aka the loyal supporters that make up the Shortbox Patreon community. Big shout out to all of you. I'm going to call each of you out by name at the end of the show. But hey, you guys and gals are great. Thanks so much for helping me keep the show going every week. And if you're not already a member of the Patreon, well, guess what? It's not an exclusive club. You can join the ranks of the Shortbox Elite as well and support the show directly by signing up at patreon.com/theshortbox. And look, I know I'm on my, shameless salesman soapbox right now, but I will say it is a good time to join because I'm going to start doing a monthly comic book giveaway contest exclusive to Patreon starting in September. I'm also mailing out some comic care packages to some of the existing members right now, so it's a good time to get in on that. And that's all in addition to the regular perks and rewards that all the patrons get already. So you'll be able to enjoy things like early access to commercial-free episodes. You get, did I say early access? Early access. You get extra bonus shows. And in some cases, like I just mentioned, you get free comics and Shortbox merch, depending on the tier you sign up for. At the end of the day, it's super affordable, right? It's like $5 a month. That's like the cost of one single Marvel comic in today, okay? So not a big deal for you, but would mean the world to me. Help me keep the lights on here at Shortbox HQ. Once again, support the show, get rewarded, and have my undying gratitude until the end of time. Sign up at patreon.com/theshortbox. And without further ado, we can finally get this show started. Shortbox Nation, let's welcome Fred Van Lente to the show. What up, Fred? How you doing?
Way better. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. Fred, I was today years old, learning that you have been writing an annual celebratory column for Jack Kirby's birthday since 2020 on one of my favorite comic book focus websites. I feel like doesn't get enough credit. 13thdimension.com. Yeah. You've been writing, like I said, this column for the past 5 years. We're recording on what would have been Jack Kirby's 108th birthday. You've written a couple, like I said, about 5 columns at this point, ranging from things like the best top 13 Jack Kirby series of the 60s and 70s, top 13 essential Jack Kirby Captain America stories. And this year's or today's column was about the top 13 Jack Kirby giant monsters. Yep. Not only did I learn a lot about all the different monsters, but I also learned about a reptile's reproductive organ, which I don't think I asked for, but hey, that's what I got.
It's hemipenis. You learned a new word today that you probably did not know or want to know.
Not really, but I feel smarter because of that. All right, I learned a lot.
Explain the context of why I broke that up.
Yeah, hit it.
which is that everybody is highly amused, particularly if you're a fan of Warren Ellis and Stuart Immon's next wave of Fin Fang Foom, the giant Kirby dragon with his, for some reason, all the other Kirby monsters strut around naked, but for whatever reason, Stan and or Jack decided to put these ridiculous purple shorts on Fin Fang Foom. However, if you know anything about lizards, and I assume dragons, even giant alien dragons or lizards, right? They can actually, they keep their, and turtles also, actually, most turtles. And was it snakes or turtles? I forget. I think it's, anyway. Certain species of reptiles, males, they don't just walk around with their fin dong dooms hanging out all the time. They can actually retract them inside their bodies. So in other words, not only is it totally weird that all the other Kirby monsters don't have pants on, and Fin Fang Foom does, he has the least reason to wear pants since you're not actually concealing anything because, the organ in question does not really come out until it's being used. Which, in 1961 kids' monster comics, not a lot of monster sex. They weren't those kinds of comics.
Yeah, it left much to be desired if you were looking for monster sex in the 60s.
Yes, maybe wait 8 decades to get some undergrounds, until people really started dropping acid and then drawing monster comics. That'd be a slightly different situation, but yeah. So that's why I felt the need to educate people on reptilian sex organs.
Well, look, that aside, a really quick editor's note. Go ahead.
Nice segue.
Editor's note, insert the more you know sound effect right here. Okay, there we go. But no, I had a great time reading today's article to celebrate, the king himself. And my opening question to you is, how is writing about Jack Kirby for the last, for 13th Dimension, for the last maybe more than 5 years, and on other projects like, the comic book history of comics, how has that changed the way that you see his legacy and impact on the medium of comics? And has it changed your relationship with his work at all?
Well, I'm sort of a strange kid in that I grew up in the 70s when they had then Marvel's kind of never let that stuff go out of print. But when I was a kid, some of the first comics I ever had, my parents bought at the bookstore where they had these like paperback collections of the original Ditko, Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, and the original Kirby, a bunch of original Captain Americas and Avengers, and Hulk and Fantastic Four, most notably. And so I sort of got exposed to his stuff like as if I was a kid in the 60s when actually I was reading them 10 years after the fact. And I think like a lot of people, when he made that transition to the fourth world and as his work matured, it wasn't until I was older that I was really able to appreciate it. And, being in my 20s and finding out the whole story about how Stan Lee maybe took some more credit than was really deserved. And that sort of, I ended up kind of picking up the banner for him a little bit. My wife, Crystal and I, as you mentioned, we were liking Kirby. That we did that in 2014, I think was the premiere of that, although I've been working on it for a long time. Comic Book History Comics started out as a comic series like in 2008, so I've been doing it for a while. But it's just awesome because I keep reading new stuff. The fun thing about the annual, the man was so prolific, I haven't even I wouldn't go so far as to say I haven't scratched the surface. I have very much scratched the surface, but I have not reached the bottom yet. I'm not a completist, but at least in terms of collecting, but I am in terms of reading, and I haven't even, I think I probably read 70% of his output, something that, and I'm 53 years old and I've been reading him since I was 8. So it's taken a while.
What do you think? What do you think someone that is, this might be like a twofold question, but what do you think is an aspiring, like a young aspiring comic writer artist could learn from studying Jack Kirby comics?
I mean, just the sheer inventiveness. I mean, I think that it's, I think that's something that all the great, particularly superhero creators have in common. Like I would say, like my other big influence from when I was a college student was Grant Morrison. I would say Morrison is the equal of Jack in terms of his sheer inventiveness. Just because the superhero genre is such a gumbo of science fiction and mystery and pulp and mythology and fantasy, and basically it's just all of human culture kind of shoved in a Cuisinart, and you pour out superheroes, basically. Which is something, for example, like the James Gunn Superman movie did a great job, I think, of doing, of distilling that idea. I don't know if it's my favorite Superman movie, but definitely was the movie that came kind of closest to saying, here's how crazy, this is the potential genre in this medium and all the insanity that's involved, but still grounding it in a human element. Just, even like a lesser Kirby comic, like the kind of the crazy monster books he was doing primarily for Atlas Marvel before Fantastic Four came along. I mean, there's like, just he did one comic called Moomba that was about like, what if all of the tribal tchotchkes of the world were actually aliens and they can control like literally he was probably just walking down the street and passed an antique shop and was like, I gotta turn in an 8-page story for Tales to Astonish or whatever, so sure, wooden tchotchkes, why not?
I think my favorite. I've got your article for today pulled up, the Jack Kirby Giant Monsters, and I mean, it was pretty fascinating to like get the history of like Zemu, the original Hulk, like Groot. I kind of forgot like Groot was defeated by a bunch of termites, but it makes sense. But the one that I'm like now gonna try to track down is this Tales of Suspense issue 14, the whole Colossus story. That just sounds like so much fun. A giant Colossus comes to life and terrorizes the USSR, and now like this. What is it? It's this statue builder decides to like play into it. Like, yeah, you guys better watch out, or I'm going to summon him next time. Sounds like a lot of fun.
In the late 50s, like from the mid 50s on, the Marvel, I think, because their biggest title was Captain America Comics, which obviously Kirby co-created. It kind of they did kind of this jingoistic thing that the DC really kind of avoided. Marvel kind of leaned heavily into the commies will get you, so like obviously in Iron Man's origin, right, he's in Vietnam and all that kind of anti-communist stuff. It's political, but like in a not terribly deep way, like a like a sport, like it's politics is sports, right? We're on the good team and they're on the commies, so that's one of the more egregious examples of that, but it's a fun story, and clearly someone thought they keep bringing him back, like Groot, Zemu, and it the living Colossus, somehow managed to keep coming back.
Now, Fred, your other connection with Jack Kirby, I brought it up in the intro, is the King Kirby play. Right. Which is, not only was it on Broadway? I kind of got confused by that part.
It was not. It was in Brooklyn.
Okay,
but it's been done all. In fact, I just found it if you're near Centerville, Ohio, which is by Dayton, your local high school is doing it.
Oh,
in fall. So good luck, kids.
The one time I wish I lived in Dayton, Ohio, and I was a high schooler. Great. That sounds great.
Alice earlier this year. That's a slightly
okay. That's cool.
That was done by.
I know that it was adapted into podcast form. So I mean, being a longtime podcaster myself, I actually pressed play on episode 1 today. The audio production sounds great, like the sound quality, sound design, all that.
Yeah, that's the original New York cast, and we actually recorded that for our Kickstarter backers for that production.
Oh, wow!
And it wasn't until the pandemic lockdown we were like, hey, let's dust this off.
Well, how did you get involved with writing a whole play about Kirby, and how's the experience working with your wife? I know your wife is like ingrained in the play community and all of that. Like, what was that experience like?
It was great. I mean, we fought a lot, but that's kind of like just how you roll. But then you get to kiss afterwards and make up. It's all fine. But I had written the play before I had even really broken into comics professionally, and we were just dating at the time. But it was sort of a monkey see, monkey do thing. I was like, well, she can do plays. I can too. And it was all right. But then I dusted it off when a local theater here in Brooklyn was doing a comic book theater festival, like plays about comics and stuff. In fact, my buddy Dean Haspiel, who many of you may know is a terrific cartoonist and comic book creator, he kind of got the playwriting bug, and he's been doing a lot more lately. He was in that original season. But basically Crystal read the old script and was like, well, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? And I was like, how about you be the co-writer?
There we go. Yeah.
And we'll work it out together. And we did, and people really seemed to dig it. And yeah, it's it rarely does a year go by when someone doesn't do it somewhere.
Now,
and as you said, it's free on Spotify.
Yeah.
And Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. You can get
it's great so far. Like I said, just from a sound design junkie and nerd, like I'm loving it so far. And I guess I would like to know, like, what do you like writing more? Scripts for comics, prose and novels, plays, or article? Like, do you find that you're particularly strong in one aspect, or is it all just writing to you?
It's all just writing, but I mean, I've been doing it in comics for so long, it's just kind of become second nature. So comics is the easiest. I know that's not necessarily like the right answer, but the true answer is, you know, each day is different. And then if I'm sitting there writing comics, I'm like, oh, I wish I was writing novels. If I write a novel after a couple hours, I'm like, ugh, I wish I was writing comics, and so on and so forth. So it's just good to be able to exercise different muscles, really, when you come right down to it.
And I think if there's anyone that embodies that, you know, that saying of like putting in the 10,000 hours to perfection, Fred, I think you'd be a runner-up for like being the poster boy for sure. Your bibliography is it's a very thorough. I think even on your website you say, I used to keep track of everything I wrote, but it got to be too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got one hell of a career. And I guess I got to ask, like, what was the catalyst, or what was the moment that you decided to take writing professionally? Like, did you go to school for writing? Like, were you always writing as a kid and in high school and such?
I went to school for film. I went to Syracuse. It turned out I didn't like making movies, which surprised me very much as a 20-year-old. I didn't like. In those days, I wasn't very technically minded. In those days, I might have a different answer if I had gotten into it right when digital really started getting big, because in those days we were still working with film, which was ridiculously expensive, extremely cumbersome. You're layering a lot of heavy lights, a lot of extremely heavy camera equipment. I live in Syracuse. I don't own a car. It was a giant pain in the ass. So I was like, all I care about is the story, and all this technology is just getting in the way of the story. So but of course I went to a school that had no undergraduate creative writing majors, so I just kind of had to make it up. But I was too lazy to transfer. And I had a bunch of friends there who had been at the comic book club, and a bunch of them were studying to be comics artists, including Ryan Dunleavy, who I still work with today. I'm having lunch with him tomorrow. And we did the Comics for Comics, and we did Action Philosophers, you mentioned in the intro. I guess I should point out that Action Philosophers has been nominated for a Ringo this year. So if you're a comics professional listening to this, you can vote for us in the Best Humor Comic category. And so basically, there were some twists and turns right after graduation, but ultimately, within a year and a half, we'd all moved to New York City, me and a few buddies, to break in the comic book industry. And yeah, I just really enjoyed the immediacy and just the collaboration, just the personal aspect of it. I've always enjoyed artists. I enjoy collaborating with artists. It's still the best part of the job. And yeah, and so I got my first. I was doing a lot of temping around New York City and doing a lot of indie comics, and then I first got hired by Marvel in 2004. I got laid off from my job at the United Nations in 2006. So fortunately, Marvel started getting me work after that, and so yeah, as of next year, it'll be 20 years doing this professionally.
You know, and I've heard that same sentiment echoed a few times, most notably, and I think because it just recency bias, but Jimmy Palmiotti has kind of said the same thing too. I think he just posted, he had a really great thread on Twitter the other day where he was talking about, you know, all these ideas and these projects that he's worked on for like movies and writing scripts for like shows, and just how much of a slog it can be to go through the approval process to hear back from, you know, is it budgeted, and how, and that's a big reason why he still loves comics and prefers like the comic industry over anything else. You know, he could be making way more money in movies and television and Hollywood, but comics is his bread and butter because of, like you said, that immediacy, just how, you know, how much less red tape there is to actually put out a story. And, you know, like you said, that direct line that you have to the readers and the people who consume your work. I think it's fascinating to hear you also echo that as well.
Yeah, no, it's if you're a writer specifically, you know, it's just you have to kind of really love working with artists and kind of, you know, working in that. It's like professional baseball or something. It's like, this is a kid's game, you know, and we have to do it for full time, and it's really, I just feel very lucky.
Now, you mentioned, your big break being with, well, you mentioned Marvel around 2004, 2005, but prior to that, was Action Philosophers first? Is that how I'm supposed to understand it, or was the Marvel the first big?
The succinct answer to that is yes. In
Hmm.
that Action Philosophers #1 and my first Marvel comic, which was a series called Amazing Fantasy,
Yep.
both came out on the same day.
Oh wow.
I do a lot of history comics, so I can tell you there's an old French saying that God writes bad drama. Doesn't make, we try to put these things into coherent narrative, but in a nice cause and effect we can wrap our brains around. But usually all the stuff just happens in a kind of simultaneous, chaotic fashion. So, and I had broken my ankle. So in 2005, so I not only did I have two comics coming out on the same day because of the alphabet. Action Philosophers, Amazing Fantasy, they were usually racked next to each other. But because I couldn't leave my house, I couldn't actually go to a comic book store and see this with my own eyes. I guess I could have, but I just broken the ankle. It was brutal. I was
doctor's orders, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I was literally on OxyContin, like legally, like I had a prescription for it. And so Ryan went to Jim Hanley's Universe, which was this great comic store across the Empire State Building. Took a photo of our comic and Amazing Fantasy next to each other at the stand, so that was pretty cool.
Now, Action Philosophers, I know that is like a very successful series. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it also branched into Action Presidents,
right.
Action Activists.
Yep.
It's a very teen-friendly, some would say like YA-focused comic series. And I'm curious, like, what can one learn about writing or working in the YA industry and creating books for, catered to students and teenagers and, places like libraries and schools versus, say, working in like comics in the direct market and for Marvel? Like, what's that Venn diagram look like?
Well, I'll definitely say that, it's nice to have multiple circles in your Venn diagram because I've been very lucky. Part of the reason I've been able to do this professionally for as long as I have is that I've just had a very diverse portfolio, done a lot of different things. And I never really set out to, you never want to call anything educationalist business because that's like kryptonite. People are like, you're trying to teach me something. God, go away.
Yeah.
Vampires, but we just were doing this funny comic and I just thought it was funny to do a humor series about philosophers. The joke was that this was the comic you get with your Nietzsche action figure, hence Action Philosophers. But people really seemed to dig it back in 2005, and we've been doing it for about 20 years now. We're about ready to do the next color volume, so a lot of the stuff is just repurposed material from like 15 years ago, but we always add new stuff just because it's fun and we like to keep doing it.
What would you say? I guess, what are your thoughts? Yeah, for a while, it felt like the recurring discussion on places like, Twitter or, comic book subreddit is you always hear people bring up like, are comics dying? Are they going the way of the dinosaur? All of this stuff. I might actually make that last part up. No one calls comics dinosaurs. But then, it's always like the counter argument when you look at the data of things like, well, if you're just focusing on the direct market, your big twos, your superhero comics, yeah, maybe sometimes the picture doesn't always look by the numbers like very promising. But when you look at comics as a whole and really think about like, well, things like Captain Underpants or any of the numerous YA novels, I would also put, yeah, exactly. Like they're thriving. And I thought you were about to pull out a book, but you pulled out a cat. That's even better.
My own orange kaiju is very needy. And
that's great.
Whenever I talk at my screen, he gets very like,
oh, all right. What's his name?
What are you doing and why are you paying attention to me? His name is Callie.
Callie.
Like California. Nice. He's a rescue, and I didn't name him. I don't know.
I guess like when you see these discussions happen online, do you roll your eyes knowing that, like, I think you said it on your X or something, that the New York City, New York City Library is like technically the biggest comic book publisher of all time?
Well,
I might have misquoted that.
little game of telephone there. That's cool.
Hit it.
No, it's the New York City Department of Education that Brian and I have been doing stuff for since I've been doing the Kirby stuff since right before the pandemic. Yes. So they actually publish comics for their middle school social studies programs, and I've done it. Andrew Iden, who's most famous for co-writing March with John Lewis, does it. Greg Pak, my buddy who I did Hercules with, does it a lot. So they send out about 80,000 physical comics to the schools.
Wow.
Yeah, every year. So that, my print runs for those books kind of dwarf all but the most successful big two comics, So because they find it as a valuable teaching tool.
Yeah.
Words plus pictures. It's how we think. It's how we relate to the world. I'm a bit of a comic supremacist. And studies have shown that, that people retain knowledge and information much more readily when you combine words and pictures as opposed to just using either exclusively. It's just how our cognitive processes work,
So, I mean, do you roll your eyes at that conversation, considering that, you're working, you've got titles, like you said, that are in like the 80,000 range. And like, when you look at like how successful YA is doing, like, do you kind of see that argument as kind of closed-minded?
Well, this is something, you started this conversation by bringing a comic book history of comics, and part of what we wanted to do that was the series we ended up doing after Action Philosophers. The problem with a lot of things involving comics history or geek history or pop culture history is not everyone, most people approach those subjects as if they were fans, right? So they're into their one thing. So it's very hard to find a general comics history book. That's what Ryan and I wanted to do. You could find a book on the history of Batman or, Mobius or underground comics or, if you're into EC or whatever it is that you're into, you could find a book on that, but not anything that took everything in one whole. It's sort of the classic blind man and the elephant problem, is everyone's just looking at comics. When people say comics, I don't think they really process the fact that you should be talking about Webtoon. You should be talking about what the NYC DOE is doing. Sure, there's the direct market. There's also what's going on in the bookstores. No, Callie, you can't interrupt the interview. He's like, get out of here. The simple fact of the matter is, there used to be newspaper comic strips. There's just Kickstarter. There's a huge community of people who do crowdfunding who treat Kickstarter like a comic shop. Like, that's where they get their comics from.
Yeah.
So it's all these different tributaries all moving to the same river. But if you're just looking at the one thing, if you're looking at direct market sales or, for many years, manga and, YA books were doing gangbusters. And finally last year, particularly the YA market started to contract because that's just how markets operate. They expand, they contract, they expand, and the producers of entertainment, all go on a cocaine bender and just decide and then overproduce the show, right? You know what I mean? It's a bubble, then a burst. It's just economics. This is the way it all goes now, You're seeing that right now with AI, it's like and then NFTs a couple of years ago. There were this is the new thing, And most of those things fail, but it's not like you have everything failing simultaneously. And who knows what the future will bring, but they've been proclaiming ever since, the Wortham shutdown of 1954, they've been proclaiming the end of comics, and that predates both of our lives. And I don't have any reason to think that comics won't survive our lifetimes, So it's just, I also, like, part of it is just selfish. Like, I have rarely had more work than I do in 2025. Like, it's been a very good year for me, and you're operating in many different markets, including the Kickstarter market, including the web store market, including the pure educational market. I've got libraries inviting me to do shows and stuff. You still have Hollywood interest, so it's. I mean, I think people don't look at the big picture, and they become a little obsessed with the little corner they care about,
Yeah, well said. You brought up the comic book history of comics. I told you before we hit record that, pardon me, I ended up signing up for a 60-day free trial of Kindle Unlimited just to read that. Little did I know I started on volume 2, but I said, you know what? I'm going to learn. The big selling point for me was there was an Amazon review that said, it was 5 stars. It said, you will learn something new, even if you think you know everything about comics. And for me, I was like, let's sign up. And I jumped just right in on the...
Challenge accepted.
I jumped right into the middle. Not really sure why. I just jumped into the middle of the book, and I started reading the heavy metal, or the Metal Hurlant chapter. And what I found most interesting was just... Well, one was the history of heavy metal, Metal Hurlant, the launch of, the Belgian comics like Tintin being way more successful and way more long, running than I ever gave it credit for. And I think it goes to your point about, like, having this narrow view of comics, when in reality it's like this very wide umbrella that a lot of different things fit under. But then also I think the other aspect too is the medium of comics response to things going on in society, and Metal Hurlant being a response to World War II and the outcomes and things afterwards, and how it moved and shifted with the culture and what was going on at the time. I think really paints comic books in a way more sophisticated light than I think a lot of people give it credit for when they hear the word comics. It's much more than superheroes and capes or your big twos. It's like truly like this really beautiful art form that can be used to express a lot of different ideas. And I think that series is phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to completing the rest of it.
Thank you.
That is a long-winded... Go ahead.
I got invited to contribute to Metal Hurlant this week, so I'm very excited about that.
Fred.
I'm trying to come up with they sent me their various story Bibles, so I'm kind of working on that. So that was sort of it's just funny you bring that up, and that's where you end up starting.
Cool.
Reading the book.
Well, then I guess that leads me to another question. Where do your ideas start? Like this project, for example. Like, do you have a go-to process that you like, a go-to process, a ritual when it comes to like starting a script? I noticed really quick on your website that you have a section where you share templates of like your scripts and things like that, which I think is you seem to be a well of knowledge and someone that isn't afraid to share. So I guess, how does your writing process start? What's usually like step one?
It varies. Every project is sort of its own unique entity, so it's hard to kind of say there's like a boilerplate, start. I mean, a lot of times it's something as simple as an editor, like a common, not that this is the question you asked, but like a common interview question you get is, well, what are the characters like from Marvel and DC that you'd always want to work on? And I was like, well, I could give like, sure, I'd love to do like Mr. Miracle or something, but like what I find more interesting is when people approach me with properties that I never would have thought of doing. And that's always like, I'm doing, I guess this technically hasn't been announced yet, but I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I'm doing like Wizard of Oz comics, and it's sort of a fascinating world to like work in, and that's just getting into that has been super fascinating. And so like, I guess I'm more excited by the stuff that comes to me than the stuff I go out and try and get, which is nice to be in that position. A lot of times it's just like a high concept, like I just did this book for Mad Cave called Murder Kingdom that was super fun. That's like a giallo. It's a murder mystery set in Disney World, where someone's killing people based on the gory original Grimm's fairy tales.
Oh, wow. That sounds cool.
And that was a really fun horror comic to do. We got a really nice response to that. But a lot of it, it's just kind of like, it just kind of comes to you. I think you just need to like have, and it's been something that's sort of been happening since I was like, a kid, obviously. So it's like, it just is like, it's like, getting tired or being happy or anything, it's just a state that it just kind of comes to you, and I don't mean to make it sound like mystical or anything, but it's just, you just kind of have to train your brain to be open, I guess.
You know what? Mike Del Mundo, I interviewed him like 2 episodes ago, and he said something very similar too about having, because Mike Del Mundo, to me, has some of the most interesting concepts when it comes to covers. Like, there's always like a really cool concept that he delivers on. It's sometimes it's very subtle, sometimes it's like a good play or pun on the character that he's doing. And he said something about it just being sometimes very serendipitous how the ideas come to him, and those are his favorite covers. So it's cool hearing that. I guess what would you say is the most important discipline? And it doesn't have to just be one, whatever comes to mind. Like the most important discipline when it comes to being a writer that allows you the flexibility to be adaptable and malleable to all types of projects. Because I'm hearing you say, like, you're Wizard of Oz, heavy metal. I mean, obviously the Action Philosophers. Like, what discipline do you think is really important to have as a writer to keep yourself from being pigeonholed or even bored?
Well, I think I'm just very lucky in that I just am really interested in the world, and I'm just really interested in people. And I think it's important just to listen. I think that people get a little too wrapped up in the self-expression part of the creative process, and not the other way around. And I don't mean like, I literally like, I woke up this morning. Sorry, this is
no, please, no. I'm laughing. I don't even know what I'm laughing about.
So I did this. So Nick Dragata of Absolute Batman fave, and I did this zombie comic, this Marvel Zombies Spider-Man comic, like probably 2010. And I woke up this morning to someone on Instagram sent me a DM on Instagram. No, that's not even, it's even better than that. I had taken a photo of I had made like monkfish and snap peas or something. I took a photo of it, and this guy posted this 8-paragraph rant as a comment about how much he hated this Spider-Man comic. Which I did, because at one point in the Spider-Man comic, because it's it's zombie Spider-Man ends up in the John Romita Sr. era of Spider-Man. And he eats all the villains. So the villains understandably are really upset by this murder, which is totally a shift in their relationship, right? Like, I don't remember Spider-Man killing us before, but now he is. So Sandman freaks out, and Nick, he's such a genius. He just drew the hell out of this. It's the greatest thing ever. Sandman pours himself down Spider-Man's throat and then expands and explodes him in a gooey mess. Oh wait, that's right. And that's right. It wasn't zombie. The real Spider-Man so he kills the real Spider-Man by accident, thinking that it's the zombie Spider-Man. This 8-paragraph rant about how, I have to admit, it was 7:30 in the morning, and I just looked at this. I just started laughing. Like when Ray Liotta in Goodfellas comes home, and he's just gotten married, and his wife's parents are yelling at him, and he just laughs and just leaves in the car and drives off with Joe Pesci. I laughed and drove off with Joe Pesci. This would have upset me so much as a younger writer, to have someone just break in being like, "Why didn't he use his spider sense?" And I'm just like, it's a zombie comic where Sandman explodes. What's wrong with you? Why did you waste the time to write? Oh my God. And it looks like correct spelling and punctuation and everything. You put some thought into this.
And this was on a photo of your lunch or dinner or something, right?
My dinner, yes. Wow. Of a dinner I made, and it was from 2023.
Comic fans, you gotta love us. That's pretty funny.
Anyway, so that's not what I mean by listening. Sorry, that was a ridiculous. But I just remembered that.
I love it. I love it.
Morning. But you, one of the things I really pride myself on is my dialogue, and you can't get good at dialogue by not listening to people, and really being into sort of the cadence of speech.
I think one of the other kind of basic boilerplate advice I've heard so many times when it comes to advice for writing is that you got to read as much as you write. Maybe read more than you actually write.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned being a history buff. I think it's safe to say you were absolutely a history buff considering a lot of your books. Yep. How much do you read? Do you read a lot of history? How much?
Yeah, no, I do. History's. I mean, if I had my druthers, there's an old timey old man phrase for you. I would only write historical fiction. That's my favorite genre. But no one gives a shit. You can't. It doesn't sell. It's not happening.
So you mentioned.
What's that?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, and so I read I read a lot of random stuff. Right now, Magnetic Press just came out with the Planet of the Apes role playing game. and they have this extremely nerdy like deep dive on the original. I love the original series of Planet of the Apes. And so like it's just this insanely detailed history of the Planet of the Apes, but told like in an in-universe style because it's a role-playing game. And the Benedict Preston, they did a really, really good job. But it just, I'm shocked at how much I care about Charlton Heston's backstory. It's like, why? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, but yeah, I read all sorts of stuff. Newspaper. Probably not as many novels as I want to. Probably not as many comics as I would like to. You do end up getting a lot of stuff to like blurb and stuff. So I've been reading. My favorite thing is Monsters. That's the thing I've been reading. I know everyone else. Emil Ferris, I think her name is.
Oh yeah. No, she's amazing.
But that is a dense book, and it is.
Oh yeah.
It has taken me a while to. I've got about this much left. I'm enjoying it. Beautifully drawn.
All right, Fred, I want to pivot to get us talking about the new, speaking about, writing and comics. I want to talk about the new project that you've got coming out, in particular, the Dynamite Blood Red. This will be the fourth.
We call it Dynamite!
Editor's note. Can I get a Dynamite drop right here? All right, so you've worked on, this will be your fourth Dynamite series, right? Am I right? Fourth?
This one's called Blood Red.
Blood Red. So there was Dynamite. There was Dynamite the Lives, or
Dynamite Lives was the second one. I had to get this straight.
Yeah, and then the third one was
Dynamite Never Dies.
Dynamite Never Dies. Okay, yes. And then now we've got Blood Red. This will be the fourth Dynamite series, not counting any of any one shots or any of the other limited runs.
It was a Valentine's Day special.
Yep.
Part of
Red Valentine. Okay. Or was it Blood Valentine, Red Valentine? You've written a lot for Dynamite.
My Bloody Valentine.
My Bloody Valentine. Thank you. What is it about Dynamite as a publisher, or the characters like Vampirella, Red Sonja, Green Hornet, that keeps you coming back and excited as a writer?
Well, I love the old-timey pulp stuff. Like, I was talking about being influenced by the Lee and Kirby Marvels, and which were really even old hat by the time I was 8. My dad had like records of like the Shadow radio show and stuff. So I loved all that old timey pulp stuff. So the Dynamite characters, their stables kind of hits that sweet spot. And when we were talking about doing another Dynamite series, and enough time had gone by where the first 3 series were all kind of interconnected. This fourth one is a reboot. It's a brand new start. I thought it'd be fun to do something that was set in that kind of noir world, not literally from an historical perspective, but Vampirella's a detective. There's a lot of corruption, and it's basically the seamier side of LA in the midst of a zombie apocalypse, but sort of a different one than you've seen before.
I want to ask you a couple. I want to play the game here where I'm going to say a couple of names, and these are all collaborators that you've worked with, and I want to hear either some words that come to mind, some memories or stories, whatever first thing that comes to mind. And I'm going to start, since we're talking about Dynamite Blood Red, I want to start with Marco Finnegan, who is the artist on the series with you. What comes to mind when you think about working with him? He's
great. He is from LA, which has been very helpful for this story.
Oh, nice.
He did a great Oni Private Eye comic about an undead private eye. I believe it's called Calbera P.I., sort of the Day of the Dead, Mexican American thing, which was really neat. But he's doing a great job. He's great with expressions, which is nice because it's kind of got this noir feeling. There's a lot of banter and back and forth, and many of the characters don't particularly like each other very much. So it's always good to sort of see the sparks fly through his artwork.
And remind me again, what characters can we expect to show up in the series? We've said Vampirella. Who else is going to show up?
So the difference between the zombie plague and all the other zombie plagues is in this world, only men can become zombies. There's some sort of corruption in the XY chromosome that allows the zombie disease, or we're going to call it, to flourish. So women can't become zombies. However, they can become lunch. So it plays out largely the same way, even with the gender bias and trying to keep the men that are alive still alive. So, and obviously, Dynamite has such a great stable of primarily female characters. So that's sort of where I'm just a natural fit. So you've got Red Sonja, Miss Fury, a personal favorite, Deja Thoris, another personal favorite, a bunch of the Chaos characters like Purgatory, Hell, and then a couple of the female, Pantha. I always like Pantha. She's also another vampire era character. So, and I love the Martian stuff. So there's a lot of the zombie plague may be Martian in origin. So there's a lot of interface there.
And I guess, how much do you have to know about Dynamite's roster of characters to jump into the series, or is it perfect for like new readers?
Zero. In fact, I think if you know anything about the characters, you'd be slightly
even better.
Because
clean slate.
It's a different. I mean, this is like a new universe. Like it's a different take. You know,
nice.
Like there is a Red Sonja, but she's not from Hyboria because there is no. Because I'm not sure if where Hyboria is not real. It's a made up place.
I don't know, Fred. Fred, you better be careful. You might get another 8-page paragraph underneath a dinner post if you keep saying that.
I'm not going to post my dinner photos anymore. I'm just going to go safety posts. You're totally.
Right. Look, hey, one more time really quick. I'm going to ask you some more about other creators, but just in case, hey, Dynamite Blood Red comes out October. I had it here for a second, and now I lost it. I think it's October 5th and or 8th. Wait, hold up. I'll edit this part out. I'll edit this part out.
I know the FOC is September 15th.
FOC is it?
Because you said
okay. There we go. Really quick, before I move on to the other names, I just want to remind folks, Dynamite Blood Red comes out October 8th. FOC, final order cutoff, is September 15th. So if you're interested in picking this up, as you absolutely should be, go to your comic shops, put it on your pull list before the FOC, or pick up issue 1 on October 8th. With that said, all right, Fred, I want to continue this on, and the next name I've got for you is a personal favorite of mine, and that's Kev Walker, who you worked on with Marvel Zombies twice, Marvel Zombies 3 and 4, back in 2008 and 2009, respectively. What comes to mind when you think about your time working with Kev Walker?
He's great. He's super fun, and he was sort of the perfect person to do that book with. Yeah. He did a great job. That was the series where they wouldn't let me use any of this, like the Disney sale was in the midst of happening.
That's right. That's around that time.
They wouldn't let me use anyone you'd ever heard of before as a character. Like have a movie made out of them. Disney was like, "Why is Spider-Man? Why is Spider-Man exploding?" Ironically, after the Marvel Zombies was a big hit, then Durgata and I got to do the crazy Spider-Man thing. But yeah, that's the one where Machine Man goes into the. And I really had to talk because I love Next Wave. I mentioned this earlier in the Fin Fang Foom context, but the editor at the time of Marvel Zombies was Ralph Macchio, and he actually co-wrote Machine Man when Ditko took over. So Jack Kirby famously created Machine Man.
That's cool.
And I guess bring it back full circle, right back to Kirby, where he was Mr. Machine in 2001, but Marvel obviously does not have the rights to 2001. Currently, Jeff Bezos does, since it's an MGM property. That's right. And so Amazon bought that. But anyway, so that's why he became Machine Man as opposed to Mr. Machine, which is kind of, I think Mr. Machine is kind of a cool name, but whatever. For sure. Maybe a little too close to Mr. Miracle. And so Kirby did it for a while, and then he got fed up with Marvel and left after his 70s contract was up. Steve Ditko took it over, and Macchio was co-writing it with him or editing it, one of the two. Anyway, Macchio hated Next Wave and refused to let me use Machine Man because, like Warren, I love Next Wave, but let's be honest, Warren Ellis basically just wrote Machine Man as Bender, as this like drunken robot.
Yes, he did.
Which was great. But I was able to convince Ralph, no, in this story, we'll make Machine Man heroic again, and we're going to revitalize him. And he believed me. I was not lying. I did, which, I didn't think really he needed to be revitalized because I love Next Wave. But yeah, so it was a big hit. And Kev just did a great job. He just drew Machine Man drilling through the skulls of zombies with just the right level of
gory detail.
Yeah.
I want to say on the topic of Ralph Macchio, I had a chance to He joined a Fantastic Four panel that I hosted at Heroes Con over the summer in June, and he was a surprise addition. It was supposed to be Tom DeFalco, Bill. Oh my God, Bill Willingham from Fables.
Okay.
I cannot. I apologize if I got the name wrong. Paul Pelletier was on the panel, and Tom Scioli. And the 5 minutes before the panel, someone came up. The handler came up and was like, "Hey, just letting you know, the guy that runs all the panels. Big shout outs to Andrew. Was like, hey, letting you know, Tom DeFalco wants to bring Ralph Macchio on the panel." And my immediate reaction was, the Karate Kid's going to be joining this panel about Fantastic Four? And he was like, no, the editor. Ralph Macchio is super nice and one of the most soft-spoken guys I've ever heard. He was great.
Yeah. He is.
Well inspiration.
He was the guy who ushered the first, he was the editor of the original Ultimate line. And that's why he got Marvel Zombies, because Marvel Zombies was originally a Fantastic Four story.
Well said. All right, moving on. How about this? What comes to mind when I say another one of my favorite artists, Clayton Henry, who is the artist on Archer and Armstrong in that initial run in 2012?
He's a genius. I would work with him. I would if it was legal for me to keep him from working with anyone else, I would. But DC
What's so great about working with him?
He like all great cartoonists, he's a master of acting. I mean, that's really he has that great, other than just being a great draftsman and being great as a design work, he's a humanist, that's the nicest thing I can say about a cartoonist. He really gets people, and his acting is always spot on. And he launched Archer Armstrong. He also launched probably my favorite thing I did about him was this book, Ivar Time Walker, which is sort of an Archer Armstrong spinoff with Armstrong's brother. I worked with a little bit with Marvel. He did a little bit of Incredible Hercules, which is how he got the Archer Armstrong job. But he's the nicest guy. I haven't unfortunately seen him in a while because he's been at DC for a long time.
Clayton Henry, to me, draws some of the most realistic looking people. Yes. And I think you might have said something about the expressions that he uses, and his lines are just so crisp, so clean. Yeah. And I don't know if he colors his own stuff or if he works with one colorist in particular.
I don't know if this will come up in the camera, but let me show you a page on a wall.
Yeah, please. Look, this is where it pays to be a video viewer of the show, which is on YouTube. If you can find this video interview on YouTube.
So his line work is so fine. So this is from Archer 2.
Holy moly, you need a microscope.
So look at that. So this is a scene.
Wow.
So for those of you listening and not watching, this is a shot from the end of Archer Armstrong #2 with Armstrong and Archer and a nun tumbling down a staircase. And just look at how fine that line work is. That's just this is just pencils.
Wow, yeah, the camera can barely pick it up.
See the nun? There's a nun falling with them. I know we're getting a glare off the. So you see, you can't even see it, but he's double lined her.
Wow. As
she's falling, and she's basically just still, but he's made sure to get the expression. This is something, and then here's a nice close up of his signature.
Yeah, Clayton Henry is awesome. Yeah, I would have. I'll sign that petition to keep him just working solo. Okay, last name on my list, and that's you brought him up, but Greg Pak, who you co-wrote Incredible Hercules with during 2008, 2010. And Fred, can I say, when Amy from Dynamite, big shout out to Amy Ranello, mentioned, hey, would you want to interview Fred Van Lente? I was like, usually my first thing is okay, what's the project or thing that immediately comes to mind that resonates with me? And it was Incredible Hercules. It is one of the first comics I ever had on my pull list when I was able to get when I worked my first job, was getting my own money, and I was like, Dad, I want to start buying new comics, because all I was reading was his comics in the garage, his old comics. And Incredible Hercules is a series that I look back, I'm like, wow, I was collecting a Hercules, a Hercules series was coming out on a monthly basis, and it was damn good. And I'll admit, I always thought it was just Greg Pak. So doing the research, Fred Van Lente is all over this. So what comes to mind?
You're not the only one.
Well, the thing is, admittedly, this was like before I even was looking at like the credits of comics.
Sure.
So there's that. But what comes to mind?
The first name alphabetically and stopped. I get it's totally.
So what comes to mind when you think about working with Greg Pak on Incredible Hercules? Which, kudos to you. It was a great run, man. Like, I was kind of sad the day it ended.
He's great. I still see Greg all the time. He lives in the city like I do. We have a Dynamite book coming out soon, actually, which I guess I can't tell you what it is because they haven't announced it.
No, that's fair enough.
But it's about another big, strong guy. Yeah, he's great. We just really hit it off personally. I think we have very similar senses of humor. We kind of went to a Chinese restaurant in Philadelphia during a con and kind of plotted out that entire Hercules run. But yeah, it launched me. I wouldn't have gotten Marvel Zombies without it. I wouldn't have gotten Spider-Man without it. And I didn't know anything about the Marvel Hercules before they were like, I tell the story a million times, so stop me if you've heard this before. But the only reason there was an Incredible Hercules comic was that they were like, "Will this book work?" And somebody goes, "Yeah, it's like Archer Armstrong, the original Barry Windsor Smith comic." So
yeah.
And I'd never heard of Archer Armstrong until Valiant asked me to write it, so it was very much like a weird, like snake,
yeah,
hell kind of thing.
Very okay, coincidence.
Yeah. More ignorance, I guess.
What would you say? I gotta say, I did read the first issue of your Archer and Armstrong as part of my research, and that first issue is phenomenal in terms of like how interesting that concept is, where you've got Archer being raised by a religious cult that's lied to him, and he's got to go hunt this 1,000-year-old immortal being that's kind of like a drunk now, and they end up teaming. It was such an interesting concept, on top of Clayton Henry's like beautiful freaking artwork.
Yeah.
So that's another series. I'm like, if I have time, I want to go back and finish that as well. But I want to ask you on the topic of Greg Pak, what is I guess the most important lesson that you've learned from him in terms of like that you've applied to like your writing career, whether that's like conscious or subconscious?
I mean, again, you're just listening to people, I think that it's important in collaborating to just be open and patient. And it's like any relationship. There's compromise, and then there's times when you have to kind of draw the line. And we never, unlike when my wife and I write, we never plot.
Fred, you're gonna get yourself in trouble with the fans and your wife at this point.
Oh, right, that's true. More. Now she's going to be writing 7-paragraph denunciations of my
or a play. She's going to end up writing a play.
That's right. My life with Jerkface. Yeah. So it's we did this we were very literal. Like I would write half, and then he wrote half, and we would trade arcs. But it was
cool.
It was always neat that it was always fun to just have someone to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Fred, I want to jump into another segment of the show I like to call the Short Box Friends and Family segment. It's where I shut up and take a break really quick and let someone else ask the questions. In today's case, this question comes from Ben Kingsbury. He's the owner of Gotham City Limit Comic Shop, which is Jacksonville, Florida's premier shop for comics, toys, collectibles, and more. And shameless plug, it is also the official sponsor of this year's podcast. So Ben gets special preferential treatment. I told him that you were on the show today. I told Ben that you were going to be on the show, and he has a question for you. So let's toss it to Ben. I've got to play it through my phone because I did not load it on the machine. So here we go.
Hey, Fred. Ben representing Jacksonville, Florida. Thanks so much for taking a little bit of time to field a question from me. So you've been writing and creating comic book and comic book characters for decades now, and I'm sure you've just seen a ton of change. I mean, our comic shop down here is just under 8 years old, and I already refer to it as PC and AC, pre-COVID and after COVID, for the amount of variants, incentives, and just overall amazing universes that have been created in the last 5 years. I really honestly believe we're right in the middle of some type of comic nirvana period. It really is amazing. So my question for you stems from that. I know you've seen a lot of different things. So what's the biggest difference between 2025 and, say, 2005 when you were creating new universes? The popularity of comics, the response on social media that you get, and just the overall feel that you have for the comic community. I'll let you answer. Thank you so much for everything you've done over the years. We literally couldn't do it without you. And remember, Shortbox Nation, always take it to the limit. Peace.
Big shout outs to Ben.
There is no limit. It's a great question. I think paradoxically, number one, what I find sort of most interesting is that the direct, you brought up social media. I find the direct social media engagement with fans, other than, crackpots who rant about 15-year-old issues on my dinner posts, is really lessened. I think that a lot of stuff is sort of pivoted to video and podcasting. There definitely was a lot more blogging and magazines and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I think that's a definite change. I think that it kind of goes back to what we were talking about a little bit while ago, which is that it's a word that has a lot of different meanings, but I keep coming back to it, and it's diversity. The both in terms of who is doing comics, even in 2005, it was really much more of a white guy's game, a straight white guy's game. And that's definitely changed significantly. And I think even more importantly, the channels, as challenging as a lot of the digital stuff and a lot of the internet stuff has been to get the voice out there, because obviously it's much easier than ever before to create comics and put it out there. The channels, whether it's Webtoon or Kickstarter, or a bunch of these other mediums we're talking about, just the sheer number of channels you can go through has exploded, and that's sort of where the diversity in my portfolio comes from, and how I'm able to do this and not have a day job and everything else, and afford cat food. Right, that's what we're talking about.
A big shout out to Callie, who is the co-star for this show. Right,
Callie,
beautiful cat,
is the uninvited silent guest. Not that silent you can't hear him crying around my feet, which is why I pick him up to get him to be quiet. But no, I mean the word is diversity, and the third aspect. So it's the people doing it, it's the places you can do it at, and I think it's just the sheer diversity of genre. Some of the big sellers in comics aren't superheroes. Whether it's something stealing the children, or it's the Transformers stuff, or it's the it's Walking Dead, or any one of a number of different genres. You've definitely seen an expansion of that. And I think what comes along with that also, unfortunately, are challenges, because you also are getting dilution. If everything is kind of balkanized and everywhere else, it gets hard to sort of get a critical mass commercially. But, it's been a really good year for me. So it's something that's benefited me personally, to having all these different avenues to sell your work through.
I guess on that same mindset and same topic, let's say that you could change, you were given the Cosmic Cube or Infinity Gauntlet, whatever it may be, whatever MacGuffin, to change one thing about the comic industry, or even direct market. What improvements or changes would you give, would you make, given carte blanche over the industry?
It's a really good question. I don't know. I'm so focused on making the stuff. I guess I don't really the challenge. I think the problem is that I don't think the challenge is when it comes to getting art out there and exposing people to it. I don't think that it's necessarily fixable, and that I just think it's we live in an attention economy, so I think the same challenges are like I would love to be richer and more famous, but I love, but I get to say
ditto. Yeah.
But I love what I do, and I get to do what I want to do, so I don't really feel like I have much to complain about. but I know that there are other people who are more popular than I am, but still I get to wake up every morning and go into this office and do my thing, and make a living at it and pay my bills and go on trips sometimes and, have a fun, awesome life. So I'm not trying to suggest we live in the best of all possible worlds. I don't think that's true, but I think that the challenges are kind of genie proof. You know what I mean? Like, unless I was, selfish and was like, rubbed the lamp and was like, everyone must read my comics, everyone in the world, I have a monopoly, Clayton Henry, come to my house, draw this.
Right. I can tell it. Just judging from the bios I've read, the different projects and opportunities you've had a chance to enjoy. And I mean, I can just tell just from like the screen and, seeing your face, like you seem to like really love doing what you do. And I think it comes across in the work. I think it comes across the way that you talk about the projects. I want to interject with a very random tangent, but there was a movie in 2011. Now I'm now I'm talking to the listeners. There was a movie in 2011 called Cowboys and Aliens that starred Daniel Craig, Harrison Ford, and Olivia Wilde. I forgot she was in that movie. But few may know that. Yep, and Sam Rockwell. And I think few may know that it was actually based on a comic book that you wrote. Just very curious, hearing about like, the success you've enjoyed, being very kind of happy with the blessings you've been able to have as well. Did you have any involvement with that movie other than maybe like signing off, the rights or whatever it may be? Like, did you have a chance to talk to, say, Daniel Craig or Harrison Ford or interact with any of the cast?
Daniel Craig actually lives like 6 blocks from me. So
get the hell out of here. Wow.
The movie didn't do very well. So like when I see him on the street, I run away. It's my fault.
Yeah.
No, that was like my first professional comics job. I wrote that script in 2001 and the movie was made in 2011. So as you can tell, there's a significant time in between there. But no, I didn't. It was sort of a classic IP farm situation where the studio had independently developed the concept. And then I was like the 10th writer on it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My take ended up being the one that got the movie made, and then they ended up like throwing my thing out, and then they actually hired someone to rewrite all my dialogue in the comic. So I was pretty salty when that happened.
Oh, wow. Damn, I didn't mean to bring up a salty moment.
No, hey, it's all right. It's not like it's common knowledge or anything. But and obviously I got over it. So
okay. Well, then how about I pivot to this other question I have, which is, what's the goal now? Like, are you working towards anything specifically? Because, we're talking about the opportunities you've had to enjoy, like, whether it was a painful experience or not, like the fact that you've got, one of my comics was adapted to a movie, I think is one hell of a flex. Like,
sure.
You've got New York Times bestselling, in front of your name, behind your name, all which ways. You have American, Library Association awards.
Yeah.
Like, what does a professional at your level, someone that's been in the game for so long, that has done seemingly has done it all when it comes to like opportunities, writing opportunities, like, is there anything that specifically drives you now? Like, or is it as simple as like, I just do the projects I like? Like, do you have like, what's the big goal now?
Well, I mean, not to get totally cornball too late, but I think humans have a difficult time with the concept that happiness is really a choice. One of the stories we tell in Action Philosophers is this guy, Diogenes the Cynic, who was this kind of crazy philosopher in ancient Greece, and supposedly at one point Alexander the Great, who was famously tutored by Aristotle, who was Plato's big student. Aristotle comes to Athens and finds, because he hears that Diogenes is this great wise sage, and is supposedly smarter than Aristotle, who was Alexander's great teacher. And he's like, all right, well, teach me something, smart guy. So always a great way to start a conversation, right? But he is Alexander the Great, and he just conquered Greece, so it's not like Diogenes is in a position to refuse him. And Diogenes is like, well, what do you want to do with your life? And he says, well, I'm going to go I've conquered Greece, and I'm going to go conquer Italy. Okay, cool. What are you going to do after that? Well, I'm going to go further east and conquer India. Oh, okay. That's cool. You conquer India. And then what are you going to do? Well, then I'm going to go sail south. I'm going to conquer Africa. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's nice. Then what are you do after that? And he goes, well, then I guess I will, be satisfied and just be happy and retire and enjoy myself. And Diogenes goes, well, why don't you skip to that part first? Why do you have to do all these? Why do you put these milestones ahead of yourself? Like, why do you not just let yourself be happy now? Why does there have to be some sort of goal that you have to satisfy? It's like I think when we're kids and we're at school and from our parents, we get obsessed with these carrots that get dangled in front of us, and sometimes the sticks, right? When really the simple fact of the matter is that the only person in charge of your happiness is you, and you should love yourself and be kind to yourself and realize that you should just choose to be happy. Which is not to say, ignore your responsibilities, your loved ones, to your family and your job and stuff like that. But I just like getting up every morning and coming in here and feeding this obnoxious orange cat and talking to my wife and talking to guys like you and talking to fans, not necessarily the ones complaining about 15-year-old zombie comics. But even then, it's just I'm at the point in my life where I just read that. It just made me laugh. Like, it was really a fun way to start the day. My goal is more of the same, because I know I'm conscious of the fact that that's not going to be a permanent, thing. So I'm just loving it while I can.
That's a great answer. I'm glad you went cornball route. That's a damn good answer. I kid. Okay, good. Fred, I've got no. Seriously, that was a wonderful answer, and I think I'm going to add that Action Philosophers book to my cart to give to my nephews. Hell, I might read that first and then give them the used copy.
And vote for the Ringos. Vote for the Ringos if you get.
You're right. Yeah. Hey, if you are able to vote for the Ringos, my man Fred Van Lente, he's got a book on there. All right. Speaking of which, not really speaking of which, this is I'm on my last two questions, and they're kind of like all over the place. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about. Well, let me take a step back. Fred, you might be the only creator. I'm trying to like mentally go through my Rolodex too, that has a day named after them. Fred Van Lente Day, which has been celebrated on Comic Book Resources or CBR for the last 20 years since 2005.
That sounds right. Yeah.
News to me. I have a bookmark of the Fred Van Lente Day tag saved because I want to see some of the different articles and write-ups from the last 20 years. But we just got off talking about the industry and then the diversity of places now, podcasts, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. What role does a site like CBR or even 13th Dimension, we brought up 13th Dimension in your annual Jack Kirby column there, like what roles do these platforms play to your career? And what would you say about the site's role in the larger conversation about comics and comic journalism?
I think they still serve a purpose, I mean, I certainly read them quite a lot. I still prefer text over video. Like,
I can read faster than I can watch.
Exactly. I don't know like a bit audiobook guy either. But I think that they still they're a strong part of that comics ecosystem. I think they're super important.
How does one get a Fred Van Lente Day?
You have a columnist named Brian Cronin who just reviewed, I think it was Action Philosophers. He reviewed the first couple issues of Action Philosophers and another book I did with another Syracuse alum, The Silencers, on the same day. So declared the Fred Van Lente Day. People think it's my birthday, which it is not.
Your birthday's on Valentine's Day.
My birthday is Valentine's Day, yes. So, even though the holiday named after me is not my birthday is in fact on a holiday. It's very confusing. So, and so he's done it every year. And every year I actually forget about it until Thanksgiving. And then he's like, oh, we got to do something new for Fred Van Lente Day. I'm like,
and really quick, Fred Van Lente Day is December
6th. It's the day after Pearl Harbor Day. That's sort of the way my history brain
got it
remembers it.
All right, so December 6th, and then every year you do something. I think the article I read was from 2022 celebrating Fred Van Lente Day, and you and I think Brian, the writer, talked about the first issue of Bloodshot because it was celebrating your Bloodshot novel.
Right, that was last year. Yeah.
Okay, so that was last year. What are you doing? What's the plan for this year? Can you share what you're doing this year?
I can't. I have no idea. Like I said, I don't. I don't know.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
It depends on what is announced. Like we try to do previews, but it's December, which is like a weird memory hole for the publishing schedule.
Sure.
It's always a bit of a scramble. So if you could tell me what to do, I'd really appreciate it, because then I'll
brainstorm.
Yeah.
I'll brainstorm some stuff. But look, hey, listeners, Fred Van Lente Day, December 6th. Make sure that you celebrate accordingly. It's a national holiday that's been going on for 20 years.
And
responsibly. All right, Fred, last question I've got, and I think this one will appeal to all the aspiring writers and comic creators that are listening right now. But on your website right now, you have a promo video promoting a 3-hour course on comic script writing. It's supposed to, from coming up with your idea to panel layout, the proper script format. You're partnering with a company called Domestika to offer said course. And I'd like to know, maybe you could share a little more about the course, but I also want to hear, what are some common mistakes or things holding back aspiring writers from being, great or proficient? Like, are there any notable hurdles that you notice in young writers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious one is that people struggle with how to start their story, particularly people in comics and people who are, a lot of the students now, they're primarily weaned in manga, which has this sort of very broad and kind of sprawling world building. And so it ends up being they have a tough time figuring out how to bring the audience in. Honestly, I think the biggest thing, and this is something I catch myself doing also, so it's not like it's a unique thing. I think people struggle with the concept that if the characters don't care about something, the audience isn't going to care about it. So that's a very common mistake, to have somebody who doesn't want to do something, or someone who is constantly complaining, or a very common problem is something called passive protagonist, where your protagonist is just getting dragged around by the wrist everywhere. It's not taking an active part in their own story. I think those are all very common things. And in the course, the Domestika course, which you can watch that video described on fredvanlente.com. And what's great is Domestika, I think over 7,000 people have taken it.
Wow.
We launched it in 23, I think. So that's been very gratifying, and that's been super fun to do. And they always have great sales. You can get it for 99 cents sometimes.
Oh, wow. Okay. I got to look into
It's also in 8 different languages.
Damn.
I don't speak 8 languages, I think.
I was about to say, how long did that take you?
Subtitled, but people seem to really dig it.
Okay, I'll throw on, like I said, I'm going to have a link to your website in the show notes. They can check that out if they want to take that course. It sounds, 3 hours, 99 cents. If you catch it on the sale, it sounds very worthwhile.
It's not like an iTunes rental or something.
Sure,
They're always accessible to you.
And I think, with that being said, ladies and gents, this is the Shortbox Podcast, and we just finished talking to Fred Van Lente about his life, his career as a writer. We talked about Jack Kirby. We got some philosophical. We got philosophical here as well. We got to see a very beautiful cat if you're watching the video version. Once again, his new comic comes out October 8th. It's called Dynamite Blood Red. You can check out a preview. You can check out a preview of the book and pre-order the first issue using the link in this episode's show notes. I'll also have links to Van Lente's website and his social media pages in the show notes as well. So do yourself a favor, follow him online to stay current on all the things he's got going on. Fred, this has been a wonderful conversation. You were great. Do you have any parting words or shameless plugs before we wrap up?
I got to make dinner, but I'm not going to take a photo of it.
You learned your mistake.
I learned private dinners from now on. I can see what I eat.
Yeah. Okay, Fred, you've been great. I can't wait for the new book to come out, and I can't wait to finish this King Kirby audiobook. I can't wait to finish the comic history of comics and all of that. Thanks again.
My pleasure.